personally? What do you like to do, Charlie?
Oh man, I've become such a nerd lately. I actually, one of the things with charisma is that I've heard a metaphor that there's two mountains in life. The first mountain is achievement and success, and it's the only mountain you see when you're, starting off. You're like, I need to get this, get that, have a wife, that's that all these sorts of things. And then you get to the top of that mountain, and the feeling that everybody has is, oh God, there's something else. And the second mountain is that internal sense of satisfaction, which is not based on doing more. So the things that I've enjoyed lately are kind of getting back to the nerdy roots that got me into Charisma on Command. So I play Dungeons and Dragons. I play team video games with my friends. I've been interested in psychedelics in terms of personal growth and all those sorts of things, introspection. So the future of Charisma on Command, I think, is going to look like psychedelic centers that are intended for people who feel like they've done the first mountain and are interested in
It's funny. Last night, I forget what I was watching, but they were talking about using psychedelics to treat like post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yeah.
And I have a buddy who's real big into, sort of exploring that. And it's all interesting. It's very, very interesting. And so, any psychedelic advice for people out there in terms of what is the benefit, Charlie? Talk about that real quick. This is something we haven't heard on this podcast yet.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll say just this has been part of the, the third reason that I stepped back is because I did psychedelics. And this is really what gave me clarity. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're a dog chasing his tail, trying, there was, I'm comfortable with it now. I wanted an Instagram blue check. I thought that meant something. And it was just like, oh my gosh, so much of what you do, you see these guitars behind me. I picked up guitar for the first time because I wanted a girl to like me. And I lost love of music as I learned to perform more for other people. So it really clued me into how much of my life was based on seeking validation. And of course, I built a website around it, and I don't shame it. I think it's a really important step for a lot of people to take, which is to figure out how to master your environment. But for me, what has been much more fulfilling recently has been turning to the one-on-one interactions with my team members and I, really going back to my family, spending more time with them, having conversations that should have been had 20 years ago and 15 years ago, and all this stuff that kind of just gets glazed over as you're growing up. That has been incredibly fulfilling, challenging, valuable, and that's what I'm getting right now from psychedelics.
And talk, what psychedelics specifically?
So the one that
there
I
are a bunch
say
of them.
People should start. I started with ayahuasca, and
Okay.
that one can have a lot of dangerous effects. I recommend it sparingly and to people who have been well vetted. But I think one that is likely safe to do in an environment where you're taken care of is MDMA. And that's because MDMA, if you go to a party, you're going to dance and love everybody. But if you do it in a room with a therapist and you cover your eyes, this is often the case with this PTSD treatment, you will reflexively reveal parts of your psyche that were unconscious because it was too dangerous. And the MDMA kind of creates a safe wrapper where you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that I've been compensating in this way or avoiding feeling this feeling. And it does create.
My question would be, there has to be, if you're going to be doing that and you have a therapist, there's got to be some type of direction or framework in order to work within, because Absolutely. Just, taking it and having you need the therapist. Obviously you need to have a goal. Your therapist also needs to be sort of on board with the goal and maybe well trained in this sort of process, right? It can't just be a regular therapist like, hey, I'm going to cover my eyes, take MDMA and let's see what happens and roll the dice. Yes. And so explain a little bit about that, because this is interesting.
Sure. So yes, the person that I've been working with has done it for 10 plus years and has worked with PTSD and all of those other sorts of things. So you start by you've got to do an intake to be like, how's your mental health? Like, this is not for people that are on the edge. It's PTSD is totally fine and it can help you, but you need to make sure that there's not going to be any sort of long lasting issues. So that's step one. Then you'll have a number of conversations about your intention. And an intention is slightly different from a goal, because the intention is something that you craft with your mind. You're like, hey, I want to be more loving, or I want to be less frustrated and competitive and angry. And you and your therapist will come to an agreement on what you're going to sort of hold as your intention. And then on the day where you do take MDMA, it often relates to your intention, but in a way that you did not expect. And that's natural because what's blocking you is unconscious. The thing that is in your way is not something that you're aware of. If you were aware of it, you would have taken care of it by now.
Sure.
And so things from your past will come up. And that's been the case with me, that I was like, oh my God, I didn't think that affected me. And that has shaped so much of my life. And if I don't deal with this, feel these feelings, then I'm going to continue compensating without even realizing it. And then your therapist afterwards helps you, and in my case, records what you've said, talks about it with you, helps you process it, and then make changes that may or may not be necessary based on your experience in your life.
And so what about psychedelics as a recreational use? Like you just want to have a good time and take some mushrooms, go down to the beach and hang out. What, like, is that something else that you would like advise or talk a little bit about?
I mean, I'm the type of, I don't drink. I only do psychedelics for this purpose. I let other people make that decision themselves. And the truth is, many people are totally safe, comfortable, and fine doing it that way. That for me, there's just so much more value in it if you're introspective. But that's not to poo-poo people's choices to do it, on a beautiful day on the beach, if that's what suits them.
And so you have used it to basically help discover who you are a bit better and basically help you sort of figure out that second mountain, as you were talking about, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, you guys can cut this. This is not something that I'm sensitive with sharing these days, but just in case it matters to someone else there, one of the things that came up for me is that I was molested when I was little, and I had forgotten. I had just pushed it into a box. And it's incredible that your brain can do those sorts of things. And for me, realizing it, and the shame that came up, and the, oh my God, I can't believe this. It was a very important thing for me to encounter, and something that I still am untangling and realizing how its effects permeated into different areas of my life.
Yeah.
So that's, you come in with an intention, but certainly that was not my intention. That was something that surprised me when it came up, but has been incredibly valuable to realize and experience and go through in the safety of a therapeutic environment.
No, it's interesting what your brain can do. And this is something that I tell people, because I had a few abusive stepfathers when I was younger, not like sexually or physically, but emotionally, they did a number on me. And the interesting thing is I can't remember.
Yeah.
Literally like a block of from second grade until fifth grade. I can't remember. I don't remember living with the dude. I don't remember, like, I remember like what he looked like. I remember the house, but I don't actually remember any of it. And, it's very interesting. Now you're probably like, yo, you got to go see a therapist and take care of that. I'm like, nah, I think I'm good.
I don't push people to. I really, I at first, when I first did it, it was like, I was evangelical. Yeah, everyone's got to do this. And I realize now, when it's right, and you'll hear about it from me and somebody else will say it. And when it's right, if it's right, you will seek it out. You have the ability to, but what I can say is it's highly expected that memories would surface from that time period, because your brain was protecting you, and as was mine. It's going, you can't handle this. You're too little for this shit. We got to survive. And it does you a favor, quite frankly.
Yeah.